It is our duty to fairly assess the facts and the Constitution. I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Mr. Chabot is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty clear to me that no matter what questions we ask these four witnesses here today, and no matter what their answers are, that most, if not all, of the Democrats on this committee are going to vote to impeach President Trump. That's what their hardcore Trump-hating base wants, and they've wanted that since the president was elected 3 years ago. In fact, when Democrats took over the House, one of the first things that they did was introduce articles of impeachment against President Trump, and that was way before President Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky ever had their famous phone call, whether it was perfect or not. Now, today, we're undertaking a largely academic exercise instead of hearing from fact witnesses like Adam Schiff or Hunter Biden, but we're not being permitted to call those witnesses. It would seem that since Schiff, for example, misled the American people on multiple occasions, common sense and basic fairness would call for Schiff to be questioned about those things, but we can't. Mr. Chairman, back in 1998, when another president, Bill Clinton, was being considered for impeachment, you said, and I quote, "We must not overturn an election and impeach a president without an overwhelming consensus of the American people and their representatives in Congress." You also said, quote, "There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment substantially supported by one of the major political parties and largely opposed by the other." You said such an impeachment would lack legitimacy, would produce divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come, and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. That's what you said back then, Mr. Chairman. Well, what you said should never happen, that we should never do, is exactly what you're doing now, moving forward without a consensus and impeachment by one major party that's opposed by the other. And it's almost certain that it's going to result in the very divisiveness and bitterness that you so accurately warned us about back then. Mr. Chairman, a couple more quotes from a very wise Jerry Nadler from about 2 decades ago. Quote, "The last thing you want, it's almost illegitimate, is to have a party line impeachment. You shouldn't impeach the president unless it's a broad consensus of the American people." Those were wise words, Mr. Chairman, but you're not following them today. And finally, again, your words back then, the issue in a potential impeachment is whether to overturn the results of a national election, the free expression of the popular will of the American people. That is an enormous responsibility and an extraordinary power. It is not one we should exercise lightly. It is certainly not one which should be exercised in a manner which either is or would be perceived by the American people to be unfair or partisan, unquote. Again, Mr. Chairman, those things that you warned against then are exactly what you and your Democratic colleagues are doing now. You're about to move forward with a totally party line impeachment. That is clearly not a broad consensus of the American people. You're overturning the result of a national election, and there's no doubt that it will be perceived by at least half of the American people as an unfair and partisan effort. You seem bound and determined to move forward with this impeachment, and the American people deserve better. I get it. Democrats on this committee don't like this president. They don't like his policies. They don't like him as a person. They hate his tweets. They don't like the fact that the Mueller investigation was a flop. So now you're going to impeach him. Well, I got news for you. You may be able to twist enough arms in the House to impeach the president, but that effort's going to die in the Senate. The president's going to serve out his term in office and in all likelihood be reelected to a second term, probably with the help of this very impeachment charade that we're going through now. And while you're wasting so much of Congress's time and the American people's money on this impeachment, there are so many other important things that are going undone. Within this committee's own jurisdiction, we should be addressing the opioid epidemic. We could be working together to find a solution to our immigration and asylum challenges on our southern border. We could be protecting Americans from having their intellectual property and jobs stolen by Chinese companies. And we could be enhancing election security, just to name a few things. And Congress as a whole could be working on rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, providing additional tax relief to the nation's middle-class families, and providing additional security to our people here at home and abroad. Instead, Here we are spinning our wheels once again on impeachment. What a waste. The American people deserve so much better. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The